Hi everyone, welcome back to Jungle Citizens, and today we're going to be having a chat with Karthik and we're going to go and see his land. Pedro, say hi. So we're sitting here along a perennial stream, and you can see all around of us, you have a decent amount of forest, you have a decent amount of canopy cover, and most of these trees are evergreen trees. So this is a disturbed landscape. It is a landscape that people have been clearing and cutting, and yet it is in pretty good condition. Because it's shady, this area is very, very cool. And that makes a huge difference in these inland areas. It also means that the water is clear, the water is cool, the water doesn't have any algae or any eutrophication or anything like that. This stream flows from the forest, so there's no contaminants in here. Now, what I want to do is just jump over here and show you guys the importance of these ecosystems and why we need to restore them, because this is not a forest that should exist only along the riverbank. This is a forest that should exist across most of Goa. So you can see in front of me, you have this line. So in here, we have this nice, cool, shady space, but we only have to walk a few meters. Look at this, look. Look at this, guys. And now you enter into something that feels more like we're in, I don't know, Mars. You can see there's a very clear forest line there. And you can see that you have this kind of green cover here. And then this area has been completely cleared. And inevitably, Chromalena odorata, highly invasive, big problem plant, is taking everything over. However, this can be changed very, very quickly. The only reason this looks like this is because humans are coming in here and are cutting and clearing it. And now, this is the best bit. Friends of ours who are ecologists, scientists, restoration ecologists have bought this land. It's 5 acres in total, and this entire landscape is now going to get restored. So what we showed you just now in there, and actually what we'll sneak back into because it's horribly hot, that in just a few years is going to start extending all over this landscape. And you guys are going to be coming along for the ride because we're going to be showing you step by step how we turn this land back into a forest. For all you guys watching, by liking and subscribing our content and being a part of this journey, it literally allows us to do this work. It's an incredibly important job. So if you like and subscribe to our content, you can literally help us to restore these ecosystems. And the more you guys like and subscribe, the more we can do. We don't want to be doing 5 acres, we want to be doing 500 acres. Scrap it, we want to be doing 5,000 acres. And if you guys come on board for the ride, then we can make that happen. It's just too beautiful. So in here, it's so cool, it's so fresh. You can see the amount of water, you can hear the birds. This place is really alive, it's thriving, and we need to get this thriving ecosystem to extend over the whole land. And that's the most important work about restoration. And incidentally, that doesn't involve planting thousands of trees. It doesn't involve coming in here and cutting and clearing anything. It involves us removing the invasive plants, removing whatever plants are holding back that regeneration, and then supporting all of the existing saplings that are there but are being cut back and allowing them to thrive. And once we know what plants are coming up, we will then be able to target specific species that have been lost from this area because of the human disturbance, and then bring back that biodiversity. So we plant a few trees, sometimes hundreds of trees at the most, but the thousands of trees that will be doing the hard work of this restoration, they're already there. It's just on us now to find them and then cherish them. Now here's the kicker. If we don't do anything about these landscapes, they expand. These evergreen patches, they are incredibly biodiverse, and therefore they're also incredibly sensitive. There are so many species of plants, of fungus, of microbial bacteria even, of animals, that make this place thrive and function. these areas of clearances, they expand. It's known as edge effect. So when you go on that side, you lose humidity, you lose moisture, you lose the coolness in the air, and it becomes very hot. That heat starts coming into this environment, and slowly these trees that are adapted to this cool and moist environment start to die. At the same time, because there's so much light, the invasive species and the creepers are able to start growing and covering this canopy. So if we don't secure this section will be lost. If we do secure this section, then we can be absolutely sure, as long as no humans come in and cut and burn this in the future, that this is preserved for posterity. That is only possible if people like Karthik and Elrika buy lands like this exactly for the purpose of restoration. And this is what needs to be happening at scale all over the world. By the way, these aren't our 6 dogs. Those of you that watch us quite a lot will have noticed they're different. These are Elrika and Karthik's 6 dogs. They also have 6 dogs, and they've come along today for the journey. The Karthik's mangoes. So, Karthik is a restoration ecologist, and we've known each other for maybe 2.5, 3 years now. Yeah. And for the last year or so, we've been getting more and more involved in different projects. Yeah, so Karthik, tell me about you.
Yeah, basically I'm a wildlife biologist. I've been trained in this field for the last 2 decades. Moved to Goa in 2020, and since then I've been looking at ways in which we can restore some of the degraded forests around.
Tell me about your land. How did that happen?
Yeah, so when we moved to Goa, we were actually looking at, one reason was that, of course, my wife lives here, so we have a house in Goa where we're sitting right now below the Mankura tree. But also one reason was that we wanted to buy some land close to the forest in Goa, because Goa, as you know, on the eastern side, there's a belt of forests like the Netravali, the Madhe, the Mollem, the Bhagwan Mahavir Wildlife Sanctuary. So we wanted to buy a small piece of land that can add to this kind of a corridor, because there are a lot of gaps in this corridor. So we did a bit of a search on Google Earth and some kind of satellite imagery to look at where the streams are, where the mountains are, where the protected areas are. So we had a few criteria, like we wanted to be away from road, close to a stream, not too far from a city. We don't want to be completely far remote, so that we can work on different aspects on the land. And that brought us to one site, which is in the Sangam district in South Goa. And we were so lucky to find a plot of land which is bordered by the Netravali Sanctuary on one side. And one side we have a stream, and then there's a small rubber plantation on the other side. So it kind of covered all our checkpoints, and that's how we purchased this land. And then we approached some other ecologists to buy it with us, because it was a 5-acre parcel which we couldn't afford ourselves. So 3 families bought this land together.
Tell me about your dreams for the place. What do you see?
Yeah, so basically, when we purchased it, we thought that it'll be a nice place for doing research in the forests adjoining. We also thought that this is a great site to start restoring. So the idea is to add this place as a patch that we restore and make it a part of the larger landscape of the Netravali landscape. Also, we would like to live there eventually, because the land was purchased thinking that we live in Kandoli right now, North Goa, which is like basically a tourist hub. So back then we were thinking we need a place to go to, and as the years go by, we realized it was a good decision, because it's getting noisier and noisier, as every city is. Like I was telling Elrika, we would like to grow old and die there. So that's a dream for the land.
I mean, it's a beautiful place to be able to do something like that. You say that the previous owner who sold you the land said at one point that he saw a tiger.
So we were actually talking to him about the land, and he was explaining it's a nice place, but we could see that he had planted teak there, he had cleared the forest and all that. So it didn't really capture our attention. Once he said he'd seen a tiger here for 4 years back, like he told it to us as if it was a danger kind of a warning thing, but that's what got us to buy the land. He said, I saw a tiger here 4 years back, and we were like, man, then
sold.
That's sold. That's like we got the ticket.
So what other wildlife do you know is there? Are there other important species?
So Sadly, just a year back, there was a bear trapped in a snare just at the boundary of our forest with our site with the rubber plantation. So the forest department came and released the bear back into the wild, and sadly, the bear obviously died. Gores, we see them sometimes, and their footprints are there.
Wow. So gores are these like massive wild bovines. They're, I think, the largest extant bovines left. Tell me about the challenges then. Like, what challenges do you see in this property? And maybe in general, in the conservation landscape or the restoration landscape in general?
Yeah, I think the main challenge would be the forest has been cleared several times. I mean, I would call it a challenge, but also when you look at imagery and you go back to the past and how many times it has been cleared, to still go there and see saplings of, like different species like trema and our Lea indica, makaranga, and some of the evergreen species as well, that gives us hope because, you restore a site far away from a forest, it's much more difficult because there's no seed source, there's no seedlings coming on their own. But our site is right next to the forest, and we've many times heard the great hornbills, we've heard green pigeons, we've heard like lots of animals and birds that disperse seeds. So all we have to do is clear some of the eupatorium, the cromolina weeds that we have, clear the climbers, clear the weeds, and the seedlings are going to grow on their own.
The thing is, because it's been cut so many times, no? You see, so the more times you cut it like this, the thicker that root node gets, the more aggressive the top growth becomes.
Right.
And there comes a point where you just can't pull it out anymore because the bloody root is like this.
Yeah.
There's another one, look. That's amazing news because this is one of the favourite trees for the great hornbill.
Mm-hmm.
They love this fruit. Actually, all the hornbills do, but the great hornbill especially. And it's a very slow growing tree, huh?
Mm.
Oh, yes. At least get one tree cleared, no, while we're here.
And you wonder why he always gets
more ticks than everyone else. Yeah, that's tree. That's Helena. Oh,
Yeah,
these are all smaller.
huge stem, man, underneath.
Yeah,
You'd think it's like a herb or a shrub, but
that's the thing. Like, and why in the end, over time, especially for people that have cashew plantations and stuff, you're creating more work by cutting it back with the bush cutter machine. You're better off having a bunch of the forest trees and then cutting them for mulch once a year and having that clear underneath.
right.
By doing the bush cutter machine, you reinforce all of the shrubby growth, and this is where the soil gets, like, look, this gets rained on, so it's proper desertification in that sense, and there's no mycorrhizal activity, there's no porosity, it becomes very dense, very clayey, very thick, and there's no organic inputs into it because there's no canopy of stuff coming down, just little shreds. So, but because you've got the trees that have been cut back, like strychnos is slow growing, but this is probably a 5 or 6, maybe even up to 10-year-old tree, that main stump. So that'll fly because it's got a 10-year-old root system, no? It's only got 1 year of tree, but it's got 10 years of roots underneath, which means it has access to way more nutrients.
More than active restoration, we will have to just do assisted regeneration, assisted restoration, and the rainfall is quite high. It's about 4 meters. So as long as we nurture the place, it's going to get back to a forest relatively quick. There were some sacred groves in this site. Even when we purchased the villages, they asked us for access once in a year to visit their sacred groves, and we were happy to do so. And we figured that these are not actually sacred groves, but more like 3 or 4 sacred stones that they have in our patch. So we told them obviously that they can come and visit. All we don't want them to do is cut trees in our patch, hunt animals in our patch. They're always welcome to come and visit their sacred groves and sacred gods. And yeah, we would like to work with them. So one of the challenges is obviously that it has been clear felled. Second is of there being a village right next to us. But both these can actually work in our favor. And the villagers actually know the place much better than us. So if they are on our team, they can actually help us restore it better. Maybe the third challenge would be forest department, to work with them because they're right there next to us. So the last time we went to our land, we saw some people setting fire, and we were completely alert and we ran to them, and they were just cutting a forest line. They were clearing a line so that the fire from our land doesn't go to the forest. But clearly they were quite surprised that we were stopping them from burning our area. And so, yeah, working with them will also be a challenge. So, all these three things can actually be leveraged to our side if we work with them. Yeah.
Yeah, this is it. I think moving forward, collaboration is absolutely key. Even collaboration between organizations or people that wouldn't traditionally see eye to eye, because it really has reached the point where something needs to happen fast. I mean, the climate crisis is one that is spoken about a lot, but the biodiversity crisis is as severe and as extreme, because once the biodiversity is gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's not something that you can bring back.
True.
So,
yeah, and working with people and the department in Goa, at least, it's key.
yeah, because this place is such an opportunity. It does still have reasonable forest cover, even if it's very degraded.
Yeah.
There are a lot of visitors to this state. If this is a state that shows a genuine, tangible restoration, forest-friendly approach, it will become a unique place in the world. It will become a place that is spoken about internationally and is considered in hugely high regard. I guess the other question to ask would be, what challenges do you see in that wider conservation landscape?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges when Alex and I also looked at the landscape in general is that there are these gaps that have formed either due to cultivation or mining or other anthropogenic disturbances. Covering those gaps, or like filling those gaps right from Maharashtra, northern Maharashtra, Amboli, back to Anshidandeli and further south. If you look at it in terms of forest, there are these vast gaps. If all of us conservationists, ecologists, restoration ecologists work together to fill those gaps and buy these small parcels or get people in our favor or forest departments, if those gaps are filled, I think that would be the main thing to do at this point. Either buying the land, leasing the land, or working with department.
And agriculturalists. If private landowners can give 5 meters of their periphery border and allow that to be restored, then suddenly you have the ability for all of these crucial animals like slender loris or giant squirrels to move from patch to patch.
True.
And it has to be said, this is a global issue.
Yeah.
There's nowhere in the world where this massive fragmentation is not happening.
Also, filling these fragmentation or gaps will actually reduce conflict. People always wonder that, you're going to restore a site that was earlier human dominated, and what's going to happen? The animals are going to come into the village, but that's not what happens. Once they have a secured corridor, a secure habitat to stay, the conflict is going to reduce, not increase. And that's what we have to communicate to the people.
Yeah. And we have seen this quantifiably, actually, in the first place that we stayed in the very south of Goa, and in the second place we stayed. In the 2.5 years that we were in the Madai Wildlife Sanctuary, when we first arrived, the wild boar would come in and they would absolutely decimate the plantation, like bananas gone. 300, 400 of them just absolutely smashed to the ground.
Right.
After the restoration work, 2.5 years worth of restoration work, getting the soil really nice and intact, getting the grubs and the worms in, and also getting a huge amount of natural foods that grow in the forest. These guys didn't touch our bananas. There was no need. They had so many roots and grubs and other things, berries to eat, that they didn't bother. It's by doing this all together that you can maximize the impact, and therefore also maximize the impact on this human-wildlife conflict.
Yeah. More and more, we recommend people stop using the word conflict at all. It's more like human-animal interactions. Even when we talk about reducing a conflict, there's this assumption that there is a conflict, right?
Yeah, I mean, but we have to be pragmatic, but in many places there is. You know, we've seen some terrible images here in India over the past few weeks. There was an elephant being harassed by 800 odd people and was then getting attacked by a JCB.
Yeah.
It's important that we somehow recognize all of the positives with the interactions between humans and wildlife, because at the end of the day, they bring us so much wonder and so much amazement, and they enrich our lives in so many ways. And frankly, we couldn't do without them.
True.
None of these mangoes would exist without bees, you know?
Yeah, true.
Like, everything is interconnected, and that part of the narrative needs to be really strongly communicated at all levels and at all ages. And at the same time, we have to be very clear and say, if we carry on doing what we're doing right now, there is going to be an ever-increasing conflict, because the reality is we are seeing not only the loss of wildlife species, but the decimation of our forests and ecosystems.
Yeah.
And when all of those ecosystems and forests go, there's no food for the animals. Of course they're going to come and raid our crops. Of course they're going to end up being compromised because they have to cross a road with their baby calf or whatever it is.
True.
So there's no future in fighting nature. There is so much opportunity in community. If there were to be a way to get a collaborative community of ecologists, environmentalists, wildlife biologists to be purchasing small pieces, the impact can be massive.
Yeah.
It can be very alone being in the forest on your own,
that's
but if
something
you
we
have
realize. Yeah.
6, 8, 10 families that all think alike.
That's exactly the reason why we also purchase the land with other ecologists, so that when we are away, someone else is there also in the land, and when they're away, we are there, and when we're all there, we have a social interaction. It's not a remote, isolated area, but after a few years, you tend to get a little bit low, even mentally. So yeah, it's always great to have a collaborative effort.
So guys, if you have a piece of land that you would like to restore in a wet tropical forest or rainforest, or if you're looking to buy a land around Goa or somewhere in the Western Ghats, do get in touch with us.
Actually, people who want to sell their land are also getting in touch with us. So there are lands that are available even now. So do get in touch for any such prospects. Yeah.
And these properties need to go into the right hands, not the wrong ones. So guys, that's all for today, but we hope you guys stay tuned and watch us on this journey, because you guys being on board makes a massive difference. It allows us to reach out to more people, to create more engagement and awareness, to create wonder and inspiration of nature, because it's such an incredible thing. And most importantly, it helps us quite literally to fund the work that we do. So thank you guys very much. It's a pleasure as always to have you along, and we will see you very soon. Thank you.
I'm glad he didn't cut it down.
Yeah.